We talked last week about RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing, which gave me another chance to stand on what is, to my audience, a very familiar soapbox. I made the case, as I have so many times in the past, that the greatest big pharma scandal is not the COVID vaccine, though that is a huge scandal, or how big pharma has contributed to the opioid epidemic by getting thousands of Americans hooked on painkillers, though again, a major scandal. It is the fact that they have used misinformation and outright lies and fabrications to convince millions of otherwise healthy people to take highly potent psychotropic drugs. Working with the psychiatric industry, big pharma has, over time, medicalized the entire human condition, every thought, emotion, feeling, prescribed a drug to treat it, as though a feeling or thought or mental disposition is automatically diseased just because it happens to be unpleasant or inconvenient. The invention of ADHD and the mass prescribing of amphetamines to children in an effort to treat this completely contrived disease is the worst example of this. And I've made the case against ADHD as a medical diagnosis many times. I won't repeat the whole rant here. You can check my YouTube channel to find many different versions of my anti-ADHD soliloquy. If you listen to the case that I make and that plenty of other skeptics have made over the years, you'll understand that we are not denying the existence of what psychiatrists would call ADHD symptoms. ADHD is not a discrete disease like liver cancer. It is a description of a set of behaviors. And there's no doubt that those behaviors are real. Yes, many children, especially boys, exhibit them. What we deny is that those behaviors are inherently disordered, that they are an indication of an illness, and that they should be eradicated through the use of psychotropic drugs. That is our point. And there's more to be said on that general point. I've said it again many times. So instead today, what I'd like to do is share one specific thought related to this topic. It's been on my mind after reading a message from a parent who insisted that although they agreed generally with my point about big pharma and even my point about ADHD, they had no choice but to put their own 7-year-old son on ADHD drugs because his behavior was so wild and so disruptive and he struggled so much in school. They, quote, tried everything before resorting to medication, they claim. And that is a refrain that I have heard countless times. I cannot tell you the number of conversations I've had with and emails I've read from parents who claim that they went the medication route as a last resort after, quote unquote, trying everything. But here's my problem with parents who say they tried everything before putting their children on drugs. My problem is that it isn't true. It can't be true. How could you have tried everything? The child is 7 years old. Even if he's 8 or 9 or 10 or 12, there's no way that you tried everything. If your child's been diagnosed with ADHD or you suspect that he has this artificial illness, consider this before you claim that you've arrived at your last resort. Have you tried drastically reducing his screen time? I mean, cutting it down to 30 minutes a day from the hours a day he's probably currently getting. Have you tried cutting down your own screen time and using that time to interact with your child, play games with him, give him something enjoyable and wholesome and constructive to focus on? Did you try changing his diet? Did you try getting all the processed sugary junk out of your house completely? Did you try finding him some kind of sport or outdoor activity that allows him to burn off energy and develop useful skills? Did you try mandatory 45-minute reading time at night before bed where all screens are turned off and he sits and reads, or you read to him and you kind of unwind and you get that experience of reading? Did you try harsher punishments for misbehavior? Did you try introducing serious consequences for serious misbehavior? Did you try all of that? Now, I know that you'll probably say that you did. But you didn't. I know that you didn't. And if you have a kid in elementary school on ADHD drugs, I'm flat out telling you, you did not try all these things. I know that you didn't try them because trying them means implementing these strategies and sticking with them for years. It means giving these seeds time to grow fruit. It means giving your child time, a lot of time. He needs a lot of time. You cannot possibly be at your last resort when he's 7. You haven't given any of these strategies even close to the amount of time they need. In other words, you actually haven't tried anything. You've tried nothing. Medication is not your last resort, it's your first. He's 7. There is no last here. What is the last? His existence just began 7 years ago. You haven't given him any time. You haven't given him any chance to grow and mature. You tried these methods to help your son, but you abandoned them way before they could have possibly shown results. So give your child time. He needs time. You tried everything, but the one thing you didn't try was time. So it's like saying that you tried everything to make a perfect loaf of bread, except leaving it in the oven for more than 2 minutes. You've employed every bread-making strategy you possibly could think of, so long as it would take less than 2 minutes. Well, in that case, you haven't actually tried to make bread, because, sorry, bread takes time. Children take a lot more time. That's the job of parenting. It requires sustained, consistent effort for years and years and years. That's the gig, right? It's what we signed up for. And this is a very important point that I actually think about a lot, because this false urgency, this need to fix our kids in 30 seconds or less, is what Big Pharma preys upon. I mean, they've made billions on this. It's the same sense of panic and need for quick fixes that led many parents to put their children on chemical castration drugs as a way of fixing what would have otherwise been a very temporary confusion about their gender. Most of the worst decisions parents make, the most unintentionally destructive ones, are made in the name of fixing a child quickly. They are motivated by a false sense of urgency, by this hallucinatory idea that a child's most challenging behaviors must be changed right away, or else some unspecified terrible thing will happen. They're made because the parent doesn't want to, or has been convinced that they shouldn't, give it time. Here's the thing about kids. And if I could get parents to understand one thing, it might be this. Nothing is permanent. Everything changes. And they go through phases. And those phases can be intense. They could last for 6 days or 6 years. But either way, they won't last forever. So just to give you one example of the dozens and dozens that I could supply from my own life and my family, my oldest daughter struggled to read, hated reading for many years. From the age of like about 4, right around the time when you first start reading, to right around 11. Getting her to read was like pulling teeth. And she had a very hard time with it for a long time. She was, for a long time, way behind her peers. And yes, as parents, we worried about it. For all this stuff that I'm saying about, give it time, it's not easy to do. I understand that. And so as a parent, we're worried and we're fretting. And we can't help but imagine a dark future where our daughter is 25 years old and can barely read. Well, then one day it changed. And now at 11 and a half, we can't get her to stop reading. I mean, she reads like 2 whole chapter books a week. I'm talking books that are 300 pages. She's just burning through them. She reads morning, afternoon, and night. I catch her in a room with a flashlight 2 hours after bedtime, still reading. And then she wakes up and starts reading again. The other day, I actually had to tell her to stop reading and come watch TV. Okay, I wanted to watch just about an hour of TV as a family. We don't watch a lot of TV, but I wanted to do that, and she wanted to stay in her room and read. I had to say words that perhaps no parent has ever uttered to a child before. Put the book down and come watch TV. Because she's a reading addict. It's amazing. I love it. It's incredible. The point is that kids change, and her change seems sudden and out of nowhere. And it was sudden, but it wasn't out of nowhere. We worked with her for years and years and years, every day for years. And it's just that we saw little progress visibly. And then we saw a gigantic Grand Canyon leap of progress all at once. That's the way it is with kids, in my experience. But you have to give them time. Before you start messing with their brains and drugging them and medicating them and medicalizing them, give them time. Lead them in the right direction. Take them by the hand and pull them along if you have to, which most of the time you will. but give them time. And this is especially important, I believe, for boys. If you think that your son has a deficit of attention, if you think that he's incapable of focusing on or paying attention to anything, my question is this: how many things have you tried? Are you sure that he has some sort of neurological inability to focus? Or do you mean that he very specifically finds it difficult to focus in school? Is he able to pay attention for long periods of time to anything else? If there's something he can focus on and pay attention to, but he struggles to pay attention in school, the problem is obviously not a physical inability to pay attention. The problem is that he's bored in school. If you are drugging him in that case, the disease you're drugging and treating is boredom. You are drugging your son because he's bored. Bored by something that is, in fact, very boring. And if that sounds pretty awful, it's because, I'm sorry, it is pretty awful. Now, you might say that, well, there really isn't anything that my son can focus on. But again, I ask you, how many things have you tried? Another personal example. Both my 11-year-old son and my 8-year-old son have recently discovered a passion for archery. Okay? And they picked this up on their own. Archery is not my thing. I think I've shot a bow and arrow like twice in my life. But they discovered this passion for it. And so I took them to the archery range over the weekend, and I watched them practice for an hour. And focusing, just one, taking the arrow out of the quiver, one after another. My son's hitting bullseye shots from 60 feet out with a bow and arrow. And both of them are very, very high energy and rambunctious. Both of them could easily be diagnosed ADHD if we went seeking that diagnosis, which we haven't and won't. Yet they practice archery every day now, a sport that requires intense focus and concentration and discipline. And if they stick with it over time, they'll become more disciplined and focused in every area of their lives. I've already noticed some of those improvements just from the relatively short time that they've been involved in the sport. And why is that? Well, because discipline and focus are skills. You have to hone them. Okay, focusing especially on something that you consider boring is a skill. You need to give your boy an outlet to hone the skill. And if you want him to be more focused, help him develop the skill. Have you done that? If you're telling me, he can't focus on anything, have you helped him develop the skill of focus? Have you tried finding him an outlet for that purpose? Find him something he loves that requires focus. And he'll do it because he loves it. And in the process, as a byproduct, he will learn how to focus generally, and he'll start being able to apply that even to areas of life that he doesn't love as much. If you put him on drugs in elementary school, you didn't try. You didn't give him a chance. You went for the quick fix instead. You didn't give him time. And he needs and deserves time. Now, this way is harder for a parent. I understand that. I know that from experience. I'm not recommending any course of action that I have not taken and am not currently living through at this very moment. I understand the challenges of raising children without resorting to drugs as a shortcut. I understand the challenges more than almost every person who's ever accused me of not understanding them. 4 boys, 2 girls, 2 sets of twins, I get it. Drugging your child into submission is easier. Working with them, being patient, giving them a chance to grow and mature naturally is difficult, but you owe it to your child to do the difficult thing. Neither of you will regret it in the long run. Very few parents look back on their child's life and regret not dosing them with psychotropic drugs in elementary school. Many regret having done so, and many adults regret that it was done to them. Avoid the regret. Give your child time. There's no long-term downside to this. Don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise. The other day, someone tweeted at me with an objection I've heard a million times. He said, dude, you must not have kids. Let them just grow and mature means in a lot of cases letting them fail out of school early with not much of a future. Something has to be done so that they can at least learn basic stuff like reading. I'm not saying meds is the best answer, but it's a precarious situation. Now, first of all, of course, this is why it's best to glance at Wikipedia quickly before you accuse someone of not having kids. Second, this is the kind of totally delusional fear parents have. And I get it, but it is delusional. Your kid is not going to fail out of school. Listen to me. It is literally impossible for him to fail out of school. Even if he tried to, they won't let him. If your son decided his mission in life was to fail out of school, he wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, they say you can achieve your dreams. That's one dream you can't achieve. The school system won't let it happen. And he's especially not going to fail out of elementary school. What the hell third grader have you heard of in modern times that's failed out of school? Now, what might happen is that as you give him time to grow and you work with him slowly, that he might get mediocre grades in elementary school or even bad grades. Do you know what will happen to your child in the long run if he gets mediocre or bad grades in elementary school? Literally nothing. Not a single thing. There is not a single adult walking the earth today whose life is at all hampered by the poor report card they got in third grade. Now, I'm not saying that bad grades are okay or that you should just accept them. I am saying that they are not the kind of thing you need to chemically alter your child's brain just to avoid. Just work with them and give them time. Okay? All good things take time. Raising children to be virtuous, smart, high-functioning people in this world is one of the best things a person can do, and so it takes the most time. And that is why parents who reach for the quick fixes rather than doing the hard work of actually parenting are today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.